Hey folks, it's Kozzi here, streaming for Pick1 Pack1 with our Stonescar stash build that we knocked together last night and in the previous video. I've been having a little bit of a think about it. I'm not a massive fan of the splash that we came up with. Just bringing it up here, we had two choices. We could either be splashing green for the Sword of Icaria, or alternatively we could be looking at splashing blue for hard removal. And I think originally my thought process had been that we're playing a Smuggler's Stash deck. This is going to be the whole key engine of this deck, and we're looking at trying to abuse the card advantage that comes from only Quartermaster as well as Smuggler's Stash with all of the free pieces of equipment we get from creatures like Granite Acolyte and Warband Chieftain. But the thing is, splashing green for a Sword of Icaria, whilst it does fulfill a couple of criteria, it gives us Warcry to be able to make our creatures bigger, which is important whilst we have so few combat tricks. And it also is generally a 1-for-1 removal in turn 3 with whatever 2 or 3 drop with 2 power that they happen to play. But it is exactly that. It's a 1-drop piece of removal, and it does quickly become redundant, especially if we don't see this in our opening hand. And so last night I was wondering on how much I'd rather consider bringing in the Trickster's Cloak and Feeding Time package over the top, and swapping out the green for blue. For a while I was dubious. I thought just bringing in a piece of premium removal for the sword, it doesn't go with the whole rest of our plan, the idea of trying to make the most of the equipment over here. But once I realized that we also had Trickster's Cloak, and that's just another piece of evasion for us to get those last couple of pieces of damage in. It plays a very similar role to the Burnout. That's when I started to change my mind. So I think for now I'm going to quickly try out what this looks like, swapping it around and running slightly bigger with the extra piece of removal, the extra piece of evasion. Generally, when I have 2 splash cards, I like to have more than 3 sources, but I think that these will both come in very, very late game. I'm not really planning on playing either of these on curve. I'm more planning on playing these turns 6, 7, 8, and for that I'm willing to try out how we go with just the 3. I'm aware that it's slightly weaker on the color fixing as I don't have a blue stranger. At least I'm pretty sure I don't have a blue stranger. Yeah. So we'll see. If I look as though I'm getting totally clogged out and I'm just not seeing the sigils that I need, I'm not seeing the primal sigil come up, then we can always reassess and go back. The one thing I need to do is find 1 card to drop in order to stay at 45 cards for the deck. And I think one of the last additions that I had previously was the Stranger for curve, although that does look ugly, that curve, so perhaps I'm entirely wrong on that. So we just need to find 1 more card to drop. Song of War I'm still iffy on, but I'd like to see it. So even if it's only for 2 matches, perhaps then the Guerrilla Fighter is probably looking the worst. So let's give this a shot, see how it treats us. We'll have a couple of games this morning, and then I'll take a break. To be honest, I've gotten up ultra early to try and get in without the heat being an issue. If you guys thought that I was hamming it up, yesterday in the eastern seaboard of Sydney where I live, we got up to 38 degrees, which is just shy of 100 Fahrenheit, which is warm. So I'm looking forward to avoiding that because apparently we're in for a similar day. This hand is way too slow. I don't have anything happening before turn 4. I'm totally reliant on not only picking up an extra sigil to be able to play my Scepter, but also a creature to play it on. So I think this is a pretty easy mulligan decision. And this is almost the opposite, but the good news is we're going to have our colors, so I can't complain too much about that. So all we've got to hope on now is that we draw pretty solidly into creatures after this point, because we're pretty much covered on the power. Okay, so if he has an Echo card, that's quite interesting. It means he's either playing Time, which he's just dropped there, and so we're probably looking at him having the Ceremonial Daggers. So if that's the case, I need to work out how desperately I want to trade in or trade up, because it's not going to be long at all before this is going to be a 5-4. If that's the case, I'll keep developing my factions. I need to work out whether I want to play the Trickster's Cloak now. If I do, it obviously allows me to attack in because it's unblockable for the first turn. It creates a 4-4, which is likely only going to be trade-worthy once he starts to play his daggers, if I'm correct on that. I'm not too unhappy with that because if I get other creatures, I can still get back whatever I trade, so that's not the worst. But the other thing I need to keep in mind is that I open myself up to a Vanquish. But given that's an uncommon, I feel as though, and I don't have anything else going, I feel as though that's the play I have to do, because if I don't put the equipment on this guy, I'm not blocking and trading with the current hand. So whilst it's definitely a feel bad to be forced into that position, I think it's just what I have to do. So we were correct on the dagger read, which wasn't too hard unless he also was playing in blue. And it now looks as though we're beginning to get into a race situation, which I don't love, because this is definitely not the best blocker in the world, but it is what it is. So we'll swing in, we'll kill his Wisp that will likely block. Ooh, okay. Goes to show, what do I know. We'll try and thin our deck a little bit, getting ourselves the second Shadow. And if we can get a bit of equipment so that this can menace to kill whatever it attacks, then that would be good for us. Otherwise, it'll be something that will be coming back later in the game after it recklessly runs into probably the 2/2 flyer that he hold back. Or whatever 4-drop he happens to play. Yep, so this is getting ugly. Next turn I won't be able to attack in. He's definitely winning the beatdown at the moment. I feel as though I'll keep this to see if I do happen to draw a piece of equipment. Otherwise he's going to be on chump blocking duty fairly soon. Now that's not too bad. It allows me to get value out of my Daredevil that I mightn't otherwise get, and I'll still be able to let her attack and see if we get lucky in pinging off the Wisp. If I attack with both, I also open up the ping to be putting on the tower top patrol, but they still get the choice of whether to block, so that's a negligible point. And given that next turn we're going to be stashing, I definitely want to block here and just to start to get some value. So yeah, I feel as though this is a fast spell, yes. Definitely a fast spell. I feel as though this attack is really my only option. And we'll try and slow down the clock a little bit here by getting rid of the flyer that can pump up. Surprised he's playing so conservatively here, although I guess he does have inevitability in the air. I don't feel as though I have a lot of value right now for my Smuggler's Stash, although I do need to ask myself whether it's just all I can do. Although there's absolutely no point for it unless he dies, and I don't want to be the one attacking in. The bright side is, 1 point of damage a turn. It's 12 turn clock. I'm not under too much pressure. I feel as though I can ship the turn and wait. And this is what we were hoping for. We'll let the damage go through and see if there's a juicier target for our Annihilate. And it's a shame that he's not a single faction. So now I have the choice whether I'm more concerned about the flyer or more concerned about the 3/3. I feel as though this is so far away, I don't need to worry about him yet. I'd actually do need to worry about the Awakened Student. He's the one who I'd really prefer to be able to kill. Perhaps I can wait. If that's attacking and doing 3 damage, then it plausibly can kill anybody with the Trickster's Cloak. Alrighty, I think I'm happy to wait, and... well, actually, am I? So if I attack in and he has nothing, then he's going to continue developing his board and I'm going to be forced to attack in. And on the swing back, he'll be able to hit me for at least 7 plus whatever else he has. So perhaps I need to play conservatively and just build up my board. So that way, if he recklessly runs in, I've still got some defense. Yeah, I think that's what I've got to play. That's good news, showing me that he doesn't have a sigil. And that's even better news, showing me that I've got some extra life gain for if I get in trouble. So he's forcing me to chump block here. I feel as though I've made a terrible mistake. I really should have played in the 6/6. I was too worried about him Warcrying through. And so yeah, even if I'm able to kill the creature or play a blocker, he's got enough attackers to run through. So in that scenario, if I were to play the Warcry creature instead, he would have chumped attacked in because he had the mace, traded off. I would have taken 4 damage instead of 7, which would have put me to about 6. Then I would have played the stash and still been short on mana. Yeah, I feel as though either of those decisions would have ended up poorly for me. I just had too many expensive cards in my hand. It's a shame. So if that's the case, I feel as though it was definitely me getting too aggressive early on and not properly identifying my role and just being willing to trade up and out because I was worried of only having 1 creature in my hand. So for this next game, very, very similar looking hand to last time, although I'm happy having this as an aggressive hand. I'm on the play here, so we shall keep and see how this develops. So my first big question is whether I want to play the 2/2 or the Reckless 1/1, especially given the fact that I don't have any equipment to pump up the 1/1. I need to be worried about whatever blocker he plays. And so I feel as though it's just too aggressive to be playing this until I see some equipment to help her out. It could well be that this just isn't the right deck for Brazen Daredevil. I might have needed more pump spells. If you can imagine giving a +3, +1 or +4 and Gunslinger, then all of a sudden she becomes phenomenal because she'll run in 5 damage to a random enemy. So him playing the Bladekin is quite interesting because in theory I could have been rewarded for that attack. I don't love the idea of playing my Quartermaster when I have no pieces or no weapons to benefit from it. Although by the same token I also don't love running Brazen Daredevil into Stone Cold Nothing or into potential blockers. I definitely want to attack here because I'm not blocking against a 2-1 Gunslinger, and that's a problem that I'll have to work out how to deal with later on in the game. Either way, both of these are dependent on me finding some form of equipment. And I can get them back, and if I were to get creatures back, this will be the one that I definitely want to get back, so I feel as though this is the one that I'm happier to die. Unfortunately, I can't afford to do nothing. I really need to make sure I use all my power. Yep, you got me. If I attack with a stranger, he's almost certain to be happy to trade. I'm happy to trade too because it plays into my stash plan. The one thing I don't want to trade is the Quartermaster. So I'm in a very tight spot now unless I can draw a weapon. Ooh. Okay. I'm in a horrific spot now. So if I were to smuggle a stash, all I get back is a stranger. I need to ask myself how desperate I am. I'm not quite that desperate yet. Even though you'll be pumping up to 5, I have 2 chump blockers for future turns once I'm on 11. So I'm not going to win the game if all I spend my 5 mana spell on is to get a 2-drop. This is the beginning of what I need to win the game. So we'll keep one back to be blocking on the Bladekin Apprentice. This will help me start to develop my board. And it also means whatever else I draw in the future. Yep, that block's entirely understandable. I don't love the idea of giving him armor, but it's what I have to do. And my army of X1s is looking very, very weak in relation to his army of Acolytes. Okay, so this is interesting. I'm definitely going to be getting back the Grenadin Drone and the Stranger. That provides me with 2 chump blockers, so I'll be able to block once. I'll be taking 2 to go to 9, and then I'll have the opportunity to play a 6/6, which still isn't going to be able to deal with this. So I'm basically relying on getting a piece of removal. And that's it. I don't feel as though I have any better options than that. So we'll grab my drone, grab the Stranger. The other consideration is whether I can afford to play everything next turn, which I can't. So perhaps then playing the Stranger is best. Worst case scenario, I could trade here going down to 4, which is very, very nerve-wracking when he's playing fire, because it's likely that he'll have access to burn. Although by the same token, if I don't... So my plan for winning here is drawing a piece of removal off the top. I can get rid of his Bladekin Apprentice and trust that he continues to not hit sigils in the power that he needs. If that's the case, I am happy to trade here, because the reality is if I don't draw removal... Actually, no, that's not true. I can still buy more time. Although the drones will buy that for me anyway. Yeah, okay. If he has the +4 quick draw spell, then I'm dead. Am I dead if he has it anyway? No. So I do feel as though I need to play around it. I feel as though I'm flip-flopping back and forth because this is a tight spot and there's just so many things that can kill me. Playing the Thorn Beast up to 6 power, then 7 toughness isn't going to actually make a difference for me against here, so I think I'm better off keeping the additional chump blocker. And now I need to decide whether I want to play my equipment. Which I don't think I do. I think I'm happy to chump, attack in. Yeah, and go from there. So he's bigger, which just forces the jump block. I'm not sure what he's considering on the Acolyte. Sigil is just about the worst card that I could have in my deck right now. So if I play the Scepter on the Grenadin Drone, I'm opening it up for a 2-for-1 trade that's going to leave me back a chump blocker. If I play the Scepter on the Thorn Beast, I'm not opening up that trade, although it's going to hurt me more if he has a piece of removal, but if he has a piece of removal, I think he would have used it before, and I'd be dead anyway. And I could still attack in and keep the 2-1 to chump block, but that sounds like a really bad idea. I think I just need to keep back the drone to block here and then have the 2-1 for a Warcry or a chump blocker, depending on how the rest of the hand develops. Okay. The reality is he's in such a dominant position that unless I get his life total down, I'm not winning anyway. And whilst I can't afford to take the 10 damage, I can afford to take 2. Alrighty. He did have the removal, so we were comprehensively dead. So one of the things that would have been interesting there is that the Sword of Icaria would have been useful. It would have come down a turn earlier than the feeding time that I didn't see, and the Trickster's Cloak wasn't super helpful. I feel as though I'm probably better off relying on strong mana. So I need one additional card, which was the one that I took out last time. I feel as though being tempted by the Tempter is just being results oriented. The fact that it was an X1 that killed me is what makes me interested in that. It probably is better than just a 1-mana 1/1 that's effectively a dead card for me. I'm not taking advantage of the aggression enough for it to be worthwhile. Yeah, okay. Let's see how this goes. I think I'll be happy if I manage to squeak 2 wins out of this. This deck is really looking clunky. We saw in the first hand of the first game just how hard it was for me to have a reasonable curve out. And this is showing exactly why the curves are so important in any of these collectible card games, because if you can't play your creatures on turn, then there's no point having a decent top end. You'll never get to it. That's unfortunate, having the wrong colours for the cards in my hand, but we have a little bit of time. And that's a fantastic draw for us. I don't think we're going to get greedy and go after the Justice. Instead, we're just going to play to the cards we actually have in our hand. If we manage to let this Xenon Destroyer live long enough to equip it with the Scepter, then I feel as though we'll be very happy indeed. Now, whilst drawing the Shadow Sigil there is a little bit of a feel bad for how I chose to use my Seek Power, the reality was I wanted to make sure I could cast something on turn 3, and so... Okay, that's very nice. It means I didn't have to get hurt for that. So, he's holding up a decent amount of removal, which means that as this doesn't get me above 4 power, I really don't want to run it in blind. We'll be able to see whether there's a stop for him here. Alright, that's unfortunate, playing around the wrong thing. I feel as though the Lightning Strike is a lot more common than the Storm Links. Yeah, that is an uncommon card, so... It's an interesting trade that he's offering, giving me the opportunity to turn his Aviasaur into a 1/1, but I don't think I'm interested. Even if I choose to equip my Magus with the Shogun Scepter, and we trade for what looks like a 2-for-1, I'll still be able to take out his Stranger and have an Oni left, so I feel as though that's far preferable for me right now. We're definitely getting a little bit power flooded, so we'll thin out our deck a little bit more. We now only have 10 power left out of 32. There's no reason to show him that I'm splashing another color, but I definitely want to be able to attack in. So in a sense, that was a 2-for-3. And now we're in serious, serious trouble. So I'm pretty sure from memory that, yeah, the Sky Serpents are 2 mana, so he's going to be able to cast at least 2, and I'm going to be facing down a significant amount of trouble. So be it. I don't have anything to deal with that right now, so we'll just sit back and watch the show. Currently, he has 10 damage, so it's still a 3-turn clock, which, even though he's on a 4-turn clock with 7, it'll work out the same once he casts his last Sky Serpent, so there's no point in removing them. That's an okay draw. It forces him to keep back his 4/4 or trade it out for my 2-drop. He probably won't care too much because what really matters right now are the Serpents. So we're now on a 4-turn clock, a 3-turn clock rather. And whilst I could burn out, I think I'd rather see if I can draw another piece of removal or a token generator. Or, you know, more sigils because they're great apparently. So if I'm going to be playing the Burnout to remove one of his Serpents to reduce the speed of his clock and keep it on a 3-turn clock, then I might as well attack in and get the Warcry out of this. I lose the Element of Surprise, but to be honest, the Element of Surprise is worth next to nothing right now. He might even let me get through for 2 damage. Okay, he's interested in a trade. That trade doesn't change anything for me. So I get out of this with runner removal and him drawing Stone Cold Nothing. I don't get out of it with that. It puts me on to him attacking for 6. I'll have 3. And yeah, this was a pretty underwhelming showing from my Smuggler's Stash deck. I seldom got any advantage from it, and he's going to get his card advantage, and no surprises for what I was able to draw. Suicide Attack in the finish. And we got comprehensively smashed. He's respecting me way too much. And I get a well-played compliment from him, which I think is anything but the case. So, evidently this is one of those videos which shows you how you don't draft a stash deck. I think a lot of my problems came from the fact that I had no curve to speak of. This was very, very ugly, and I wasn't able to use any of my power effectively. Whilst these are great top-end cards, you saw in most of these matches that against a basic curve out, when I'm not drawing my removal, then it doesn't really make a difference. It was unfortunate. I think I didn't see the Suffocate once, which definitely would have been helpful in a lot of those scenarios. We didn't get a chance to see whether Song of War would have been useful, although in all of these hypotheticals, if I would have been drawing this instead of my sigils, I still would have been in trouble because it didn't affect the board. And so perhaps that should have been a consideration in taking it out. Brazen Daredevil was absolutely rubbish in this build, and to be honest, I should have known that it was. I didn't have the pump spells, and I was just relying on getting the equipment instead. And the reality is, how many pieces of equipment did I have? I had 1, 2, that's not equipment. 2, and then relying on my chieftains dying, so it probably wasn't enough to help me out. Yeah, so underwhelming Warcry deck. Let me know if you would have done things differently. I had the thought that people like watching treasures being claimed, so we'll just finish off with this and show you the rubbish cards that I got. It's probably more exciting when I do better and actually get packs. And now I'll be going back to grinding through the ranked in order to get my cash up again to show you guys another draft. So thanks for watching. I hope that next time we can do a little bit better, as that was fairly underwhelming. Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to get out of the Stonescar colours and show you guys something different. Have a good one.